Welcome to Clutch Kick Radio with Ryan Lechner.
I love that intro, Ryan.
Oh, yeah, me too. It's amazing.
It's so much fun. I think a lot of people enjoy it, too.
I was starting to feel a little discouraged at first when we were first doing that because it was like, you know, I felt like some of them you were a little more into it, the first kind of couple we made, and I was like, no, I don't know. There was something about them, but as soon as you played that one the first time, it was like, yep.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's the one, definitely.
And, of course, folks are listening / watching the Clutch Kick Radio podcast. Today we've got a really special guest on, Kyle Pollard, who we've known Kyle for a long time. He's kind of a, speaking of OGs, last week we had Jim Zhang on, who's an OG, but Kyle Pollard, man, he's been around.
I was going to say, he's like the OG of OG because he was drifting back in like Unnatural days, which I'm sure a lot of people have never even heard of that or don't even know what it is.
Bro, Unnatural, holy smokes.
I had to.
Oh, man. My favorite memory of Unnatural is helping a buddy go and get his car because they didn't do anything to it. And then a bunch of his parts were missing, and he was like, you know what? I don't even care. I just want to get my car out of here. And I think that was a couple of weeks before they decided to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that there was probably a handful of people that were in that same boat. So, yeah, not good. I know there was a few of my friends that had cars there, and it was same situation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's, you know, that's the hard thing about when it comes to a shop like that. It's good when someone tries to do it on their own. It's just that shops can easily become a Ponzi scheme where you're using the money from one build to fund another build.
Oh, yeah.
And it gets way away from you quickly. And you can't do that. You know, if you're going to run a shop, you have to run it like a business. Each individual car is its own project, and each project has its own budget, and you have to follow that. And if you don't, man, you start getting in trouble.
Oh, yeah, it can turn around on you real quick. And we've seen it over the years. There's been quite a few people throughout the car scene, you know, throughout the years that have run into that same problem.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think a lot of shops run into that issue. That's the scary thing for me about this whole COVID thing is wondering which shops are going to make it through and which aren't. Because, you know, a lot of the focus has been on restaurants. And don't get me wrong, I do my food show, and so restaurants do mean something to me. But the shops, the automotive shops that are going to really suffer through this, it's not good.
No, it's not. But I feel like, and I know we've talked about this before, I feel like, you know, it's bad and good all at the same time, you know. There's a lot of, I think it brings in new opportunities for people that may have not had an opportunity before because maybe there was no shops available in their town or no affordable shops available in their town, or for whatever reason, you know, the circumstances weren't there, but now there's not, you know, maybe there isn't 6 shops in their town. There's 3 now, you know, and so they have an opportunity to come in and be a 4th shop, not a 8th shop or 7th, or, you know what I mean? Yeah,
definitely. This is kind of like a manual reset or a hard reset for some businesses, which I know sounds callous, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but at the same time, you know, during stuff like this, like the whole COVID pandemic, it just shakes stuff up so much. It's like the housing crash of 2008. You know, you saw a lot of industries go out, you saw a lot of new companies come up, and for every business that goes out of business, there's a new business that's formed to fill that gap. And what's a tragedy for one person is really kind of a blessing for another. It's a weird concept to be looking at. You know what it reminds me of?
What's that?
It reminds me of when your favorite guy wrecks his car, but he has the same car that you do. And so you're like, sorry about your car. When's the part out?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Drop a comment if you guys have ever done that or considered doing it. I try to keep mine in the PM so that it's tasteful. You know, I always figure 5 messages back and forth talking to somebody about, you know, so sorry that happened to you before I say to them, by the way, I need these parts, so maybe you can, you know, help me out here. Over on the Boost Booze and Barbecue podcast, we had Ethan D Squad on, and I shouldn't say this. It's horrible. I would never want this to happen to me. However, he had his race car stolen, his Acura Integra, which was a quick, well put together Integra, and it led police on this crazy chase for the majority of a day or a day and a half. Like it was ridiculous. Finally, the dude binned it. He got a little bit too confident, ran out of talent. Of course, he didn't part that car out. He wanted to build something exactly like it, and so he wanted to use all the parts off of it.
Mm-hmm.
But there is kind of that like pride moment where you're going, well, at least I knew we found out the hard way that the cops can't catch my car. You know what I mean? It was like one of those weird places to be in.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, hey, we've got Kyle Pollard.
Yeah, it looks like Skype is not working, so he's probably just going to be a phone call in.
All right, have him phone on in, and we'll get this conversation rolling. That's the nice thing about being in a professional studio, right, Ryan?
Yeah, exactly. Got all the programs, everything, it's all just taken care of.
I feel bad for producer Nick because I was like, quick, set up the other camera. Now we don't need it. Sorry about that, boss.
I knew that was going to happen. He was going to spend that time setting that camera up, and then be like, nope, don't need it.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I just came off of talking to a couple other podcasters, and it was not a couple, it was 6. I was cutting it real close.
Yeah.
Because I hung up with them. This is the reason why we're running a little bit behind. It's my fault because I was on call until, 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, but to be fair, I'm cutting it way close on time, too, with PARC coming up on Saturday, which is tomorrow.
Which you're going to be driving at.
Yeah, I'm going to be driving at. My motor's still in pieces. My intake is still currently sitting on that bench where you seen the pictures of it earlier. And but the good news is all of the stainless steel braided lines are done. And that's what I've been waiting on for like over a week because they ran out of the hose. And there's really no fast way to do this whole thing because it's kind of a one-off thing I'm doing anyways. So I basically was stuck, and they were like, yep, it'll be here Friday. And I'm like, oh, great. That gives me one day, and I can't put my intake on until I do that last hose because it's right under the intake.
Truly, this is a drifter thing. I mean, nothing against drift guys at all. That's not what I'm saying. But this is it's something that I've seen with every drift friend I've ever had is it's the night before or the morning of a drift event and you're underneath your car with a motor torn out.
I feel, and it's funny because I always like to ask myself, why does this happen? But you know what? I feel like in this situation here, there's nothing I could have did.
No.
But at the same time, I feel like that's my answer every time. So
yeah, there's nothing I could have done.
Jordan.
You know what? Maybe you just need to be putting out strong vibes to the universe that say, I need this to all come together. You know what I mean? Maybe that's what it is. You need to start going metaphysical.
Hey, producer Nick, you want to try to invite him?
Oh, yeah.
He's going to try to invite him on the Skype, see if that works.
I cannot wait to talk to Kyle about the way his SR sounded.
That I'm curious about. I remember him telling me that it was just a Megan Racing manifold and nothing special, nothing fancy, but I think that you're on the right track with it being the 2.2, I think it was. I think you're right. I think it had to be the 2.2, and that's what did it.
I think so too.
But it definitely was and is like one of the best sounding SRs I think I've ever seen or heard. Seen
or heard.
Seen or heard. Same thing. Seen.
It sounds like something's
what's
happening.
up?
Oh, there he is.
What's up?
What is going on, man? Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. That was a task.
I know, right? I wasn't sure if we were going to make it or not.
I know. I was like struggling for a minute. What's up?
Well, so Kyle, let's start off at the top here. Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing right now, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the old days. All right?
Okay.
So give us a synopsis. What is Kyle Pollard doing these days?
What am I doing these days? Well, if you notice, I've been working with the Warehouse Drift team lately. I've actually been with them all 3 years that we won the championship. So that's been quite the experience. I've learned quite a bit being with that high level of a team. Basically working my 9 to 5 still, but obviously Warehouse has been taking up a lot of my time lately. So basically the last 3 years, that's all I've been doing is donating all my time into Warehouse, FD, and traveling with them and stuff.
That's awesome. So what is it? Are you like the mechanic? What is it that you do for them?
I'm trackside support for James.
Okay, nice.
My role has changed, like each year was kind of different. Yeah, not kind of by choice. We had like a couple like last year we had a couple issues with the guys coming over and their visas and stuff. So I ended up having to spot for them in season 2. So I went from being trackside support to spotter for James and Peter.
I'm sure that's interesting. How'd that go?
Not bad. I've spotted for people before. It's not really what I would prefer to do, but it was a good time. It was cool to see how they break down each course and how they tackle the event. So it was a lot of information I was able to absorb for myself, which is really cool to do.
I feel like with something like that, you'd almost, there are a lot of people that probably pay them for that kind of information. You know what I mean?
Yes and no. I think that's kind of what the good thing about drifting is. There's not really like a textbook way of doing everything, whereas like circuit racing or IndyCar and stuff like that, like there's a certain way
splitting hairs.
You need to get around that course and to get a couple tenths of a second here and a couple of tenths of a second here, whereas like drifting, we don't have that. So the majority and the vast majority of the difference in the way the teams do stuff is a lot greater in Formula Drift, and it's not necessarily the wrong way or the right way. And I think that's probably one of the coolest things about drifting.
Can you tell me what your favorite event has been so far since you've been working with them for a few years?
It's hard to say. I think I'm going to have to say our rookie season of James, when he won the championship and we were in the finals in Irwindale, because I felt like literally the entire country of Ireland was there. It was insane. It was madness. Like when he won the championship and we got to the podium, they literally rushed the podium from the crowd, busted through the gates onto the track. It was madness. It was super cool. And the rest of our night, our pit was just like shoulder to shoulder of people. It was madness.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic.
That's incredible.
Hey, that DVD that I loaned you last week, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to watch that?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay. I'm almost positive because I loaned him an old DVD I had of one of the early, as a matter of fact, I want to say it was the first Formula Drift event. Wasn't it at Irwindale?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, probably was.
Yeah.
2005, I think.
Yeah.
There's
a ton of history there.
Oh, yeah. That's why they call it the House of Drift.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's wild, man. And now that we're in this, lockdown thing that's happening, of course, you're working with the EDC, which I'll tell you, I have talked to, over on Booze and Barbecue, my other show, we talked to Tom O'Gorman, who is the Honda development race driver, and I asked him about how he's feeling with the whole sim racing thing. And, a lot of mixed feelings, especially among the seasoned drivers at Honda. So I'm very, very curious how this whole electronic drift championship is going.
It's going pretty good, actually. Yeah, it's they just had their finals of their last season in April, and we kind of did like a special event, and I was approached by them to kind of help to see if we could get some in real life drivers over into the platform, obviously because of the circumstances that we're going through right now. So, we had the final round. I drove in it. We had Ken Gucci, Ryan Littoral. We had a couple of European drivers, and then we had a couple of the Canadian old DMCC pro drivers, and it turned out to be a very, very good event. It blew my expectations out of the water as far as like the competition aspect goes. Even the emotions involved in actually competing in it were so much alike in real life that I think it's been a great tool for what is going on right now. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of these people go to that platform. And I think it's been a blessing in disguise for the motorsports world that we're able to do this kind of virtual events.
Yeah. I can see Ryan getting all white-knuckled over there. He's like, please.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, like, I've definitely been like, I've been waiting for it to happen, kind of. I feel like, and I feel like there's quite a few of us, especially you, because you've been, drift sim and all that for a while, that something like the EDC and all that, I feel like it's been coming, and this is like just the perfect time. And I also feel like it's going to grow the community a lot, not even just the like electronic drifting community, but just drifting in general, because we're just pushing that whole idea out there. It's just more people learning what drifting is and what it's about, and not to mention, like, all the stuff that happened with the NASCAR races and all that. I think it just sheds another light on drifting to just show like how awesome all the people are and how great the community is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely a good platform to keep drifting fresh in everybody's mind, in my opinion. So it kind of doesn't fall on to the back burner, kind of like these other sports. You haven't seen anything about them. You know what I mean? So I think it's been very good for motorsports as a whole. And especially for EDC. I mean, we just had our tryouts for the summer season, and we had 200 drivers registered.
That's crazy.
We ended up having to do it over a 2-day course and a full day of going through drivers each day, 6-7 hours of tryouts. So the popularity is obviously there. It's I think due to the circumstances, it's grown exponentially than what it did last season.
Well, so when someone is trying out, do they have to use a wheel and pedals, or can they use a keyboard or a controller?
Yeah, that is part of so they have rules set out, just kind of like you would have a rule book in real life. One of the rules does come down to the hardware aspect of being able to compete. And yeah, you can't compete with a controller because there's just too many stipulations. Like it's very, very hard to chase somebody with a controller. There's just too drastic of movements. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a video game still, so you need to keep the playing field hardware wise as even as you can to make it as realistic as possible. And the controller kind of throws that out the window.
Yeah,
that makes total sense. Yeah. What about, I wanted to ask you about,
the update.
Well, first of all, how people can get involved, but I mean, you guys just had your tryouts. The tryouts are once a season. How long does the season last?
The seasons are kind of short. I believe the summer season is going to go for 3 or 4 months. And right now the schedule has been kind of changed a couple times because FD has changed their schedule, and we don't want to schedule those events at the same time as like an FD or something would happen, because that just would kill the driver cap for us. So we've been kind of having to like fishtail around of what's kind of happening. So it's still kind of up in the air. We have a schedule set right now. And you can check that out on EDC's Facebook page. It has all the information on there. And if you have a Discord, you can also join the EDC Discord. And that has all the information you'll ever need on there, rule books, all that stuff, schedules, car requirements. We've already had the tryouts, so you won't be able to drive in this summer season, but there will be a winter season directly after that, and we will do the tryouts again.
Nice.
Gotcha. Okay. And so people can they can come and watch what's happening, and there has to be a spectator aspect of this, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're getting really good numbers on the views. I think we're getting around 20,000 people just watching the live stream.
That's crazy.
And I believe over last season I don't know if we broke, but I think we got right around 1 million views.
Wow.
For the live stream, give or take a little. I'm trying to remember the numbers off the top of my head. So the demographic of people that are willing to sit down and watch the live stream of a virtual event is obviously there. Whether that's because of what's going on or not, I don't know. And I guess we'll see that maybe when stuff starts opening back up. But even then, if we cut that in half, we're still getting 500,000 people or so,
Yeah, most definitely. And drifting people are so hungry for it right now, This is episode number 5, but in the 4 that we've released, we've already hit 10,000 views / downloads. So people are hungry for this content right now when they're not able to get out to the track.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Yeah, this is definitely a good avenue for people who've been maybe thinking about competing in real life, but maybe mentally they don't think they're properly prepared. And definitely EDC can help you combat that. Because like I still got nervous when I was competing, like I would be competing in real life. just because naturally as a driver, you don't want to look like a fool on the track. So still have that, you still have that aspect in the simulator that, oh, there's eyes on you and you don't want to screw up.
Oh yeah. Well, cause I watched it. And so I heard they were also talking about how like, you kind of have that same like waiting feeling, you know, because like when you're there, like in FD, you sit on the line for however many hours or whatever, waiting for your turn. And like you guys had that same kind of thing sitting there for, 4 or 5 hours or whatever it was, waiting for your turn while qualifying or practice and all that.
Right.
Yeah. And to add on top of that, something that is actually maybe more of a detriment to that, like kind of emotional aspect of it as to what it would be in real life. Whereas in real life, you only have your spotters that you can talk to or your crew that's there. When you're competing, in order to know when you're up or what's going on or when to take off from the line, they don't have like the start lights and stuff like you do in real life. So you're in the Discord with like the judges and you can hear other people talking. So it can get kind of confusing. You know what I mean? So there's multiple different voices you're hearing before you go. And that's just for the organization aspect of it because it is virtually. So you need to be able to have that communication aspect of it where you don't have that in real life. You can kind of chill before you run. You know when you're up because they just are going to flag you up and then the start gate's a light, not somebody counting down and telling you when to go. So there are some things that are pretty vastly different than what it would be in real life, but still will give you kind of that emotion that you would experience in real life, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah. And you know what, this might be a little bit of a personal opinion from you. I'm sure you aren't, well, maybe you do know, I don't know, but what do we think? Are we maybe going to see like a Pro-Am style or a Pro 2 or an amateur series? Do you think that we're going to see anything like that in the EDC?
It just depends. It depends on how. The problem is the time it takes to organize the events because it's virtually, you know what I mean? Getting everybody together at the same time, making sure everybody's internet connection's good and stuff like that. There's a lot of aspects that behind the scenes go into the event. Maybe look like not a big deal on the live streams, but behind the scenes, it's almost as vast as running an actual event as far as running the live streams, having your judges, having your announcers, everybody coordinating so it's flowing like it's an actual event, or else it just looks like a cluster. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that I didn't know myself until I got involved in it that I can see relates to real life. So I think in that aspect, if we end up getting 300, 400 drivers for these tryouts, there might be some debate if that needs to be opened up. But on top of that, in the sim world, you have to build the cars just like you'd have to build in real life. And some of the cars can take 100, 150 hours to build, modeling the physics and modeling the geometry, all that stuff. We do allow the qualified drivers to take some of the modding upon themselves, as far as like you will have a certain spec of engines and everybody has to use this list of engines. It's your choice of what engine you can use, but you can't use any engine outside of that. So some of the hours do come from the drivers, but that's the problem. If you start getting 100, 200 cars or something at these events trying to qualify, there's just not enough manpower to build all those cars to be able to do it.
So I'm sorry, am I understanding this correctly? You guys build a car for a person, but it's basically a spec racer.
Last season was spec. This season is not spec. The only spec part about it is the tire modeling, but the cars are built for each driver.
And you guys are doing that.
The EDC has modders that does that for the drivers that qualify. Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Ooh, I thought people were bringing their own cars.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, no. So like my car, that was built by one of the EDC modders.
Wow.
Dude, that is so labor intensive.
Yeah. Some of the drivers, in real life drivers, I mean, it takes time to do the graphics, all that stuff, just like it would in real life. But if you have all the AI files from like your livery in real life, you can transfer that into a set of Corsa with the AI files. So that saves time there if you already have like a design up. But as far as modeling the cars does take a lot of manpower. And I think that's the issue of having like a really big driver cap. That's why we take the number that we do.
Wow. Producer Nick, you use Illustrator a little bit. Are you interested in volunteering some time? He's shaking his head no. Sorry.
Yeah. And on top of the cars, we also have to model the tracks for every season too. So if we add new tracks, we have to build that track. So using like Google Earth, all that stuff. So we have track modelers that do that.
Talk about a labor of love.
The manpower behind the sim drifting world is actually a lot more drastic than I think people realize. It would be really cool to kind of open that up into people's eyes that it's like, it's a video game, but it's not. It's more than a game. It really is a tool that people can use.
So how does it feel compared to real drifting then?
In my opinion, so this is the number one question that you get.
Of course,
on Facebook. I mean, everybody has their own opinions and all this stuff, but in my opinion, I think the way that it transfers into real life is only two aspects. And for me, it's being in the chase position and practicing chase position techniques and practicing timing. I think for me, that's the only kind of real tools that I would focus on to take into real life. Because the problem is you'll see people, this is the number one debate with sim drifting is, people are going to be like, it's so real. It feels just like my car. It feels just like this. And it does. But on top of that, there's also the hardware. Not everybody's hardware is the same. Hardware drastically changes how the car feels as well.
Yeah.
So if you're using a Logitech versus like a direct drive system that's $1,500 to up to $3,000 just for your pedal and wheel setup, that's going to be two different scenarios with the same model of car in the game. Right. So you can't, that person's going to say, oh, it feels so real with the direct drive.
Yeah.
This other person might be like, oh, this car feels like crap. You know what I mean? So I think there's a common misconception that people, when they try to use it as a tool, they're maybe giving it a little bit too much praise and kind of fogging their brain of what they need to actually be using that for if they want to use it as a tool. The cars do feel really good. One thing you don't get from it, obviously, is going to be the emotion of competing or even just the emotion of driving because Ryan, in real life, there's consequences. Like you can crash.
Yeah.
Like in sim drifting, you don't have consequences. So I think for people that are like adamant about, oh, this feels exactly like real life, I think it's kind of a detriment to those people because they forget that there's the emotions and consequences in real life when you do make mistakes.
Yep, I completely agree.
Yeah. Well, you're starting to make me think about, I don't know, a person wanting to get into drifting and then starting with the sim drifting. Actually, it leads me into my next question. Why Assetto Corsa? Do you know?
Assetto Corsa is just because you have so much control over the modeling of the cars. And that's as far as down as physics, everything. You can control. You have the ability to change the physics of the car, whereas like you don't have that ability in Gran Turismo or Forza, any of that stuff. You can literally model the entire car. You can even put in, your dyno graph if you want to mimic your torque band of your car in real life.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Not actually like enter the graph into the game, but if you know your power curve and you have your graph, you can model that into your car and you can simulate that based off your information that you would have from your car.
Might be nice to just go ahead and, smooth that out a little bit. Maybe the torque comes on a little bit sooner.
Exactly.
This GTX 45 turbo on my 2-liter. I'm just going to go ahead and have that spool up nowish instead of later, stuff like that.
Yeah. And these guys have been getting so crazy with like the modeling of like even the environment in the game. They can change that. So what they call shader patches, these are these mods that you can put in and it changes the visual effects of the game. So like the smoke trails of the cars is probably one of the more probably for me is the most realistic thing is the smoke trails that they're able to generate in the game because of these shader patches that people have made, which that's part of the rules. You're required to use a certain shader patch to be able to compete. And that's what gives you the realistic smoke and the environment around you. So you can literally get lost in the smoke through transitions. You're coming through smoke.
That's awesome.
I think that's probably a really good aspect to learn of like when you get lost in the smoke, using visuals on the track to be able to get you through the rest of the course, or practicing to tell yourself to not focus too much on your surrounding when you do get confused, and try to let the lead car follow you or take you where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Is that that's probably why sometimes when you have a lead car that's going a little too hot off the track, the other person follows them right off.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So when I was watching the EDC when you were competing, they were talking about an update. They were talking about there was going to be like an update that was coming out or something that was going to make the cars feel more realistic or something like that, or am I wrong?
So, yeah, that season that you watched those cars, that was basically a spec class.
Oh, okay.
And the update is the engines, the tires, and the physics of the car have completely changed.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, We've been testing those for the last month or two. I've been helping with the tire modeling a little bit, and yeah, so the cars feel so much better this season. And now they have the option of engines and all that stuff. So
yeah, I was gonna say that's the one thing that I seen that would kind of piqued my interest. I was like, that's gonna be interesting because right now there wasn't as many different options, and once you start changing up a lot, you could see a lot more wild swings in cars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so this whole thing that you guys are doing, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to stumble over my words, but I honestly think it's fascinating. And I love the fact that it is now getting the recognition that I feel like it should have gotten in the first place. You know, when we talk to these pro drivers on our other car shows, they all talk about whether or not they like or dislike the sim racing. I think pretty famously, holy smokes, I just lost his name, the number one guy in F1. Anyways.
Charles Leclerc?
No.
Lewis Hamilton?
Yeah, thank you, Lewis Hamilton. He's not doing any sim racing, and he has told people, "Oh, I don't think it feels the same. You're not in the car, like none of that." And then I postulated with my co-host Coy that I think he just doesn't want to, because he's missing those few things, and because he's missing the factory backing of his team and everything, all of the other components that make the car what it needs to be in order for you to win, right? So part of its driver, part of its car. You're missing all of that when it comes to sim racing, or in this case, sim drifting. So I think that a person might be able to argue that this is a very raw, real way to drift, where you're getting rid of a lot of the variables of, does somebody have a car that's tuned better? Do I have, busted bushings that I don't realize? Am I blowing a motor around a corner? Like, that this car is going to do exactly what you've programmed it to do every time. So do you ever feel like it just gives you a more, even though it's a simulation, it's a much more
gives you more confidence?
Yeah, it's a specific thing that you're doing, right?
It is, yes. As far as the confidence, I think from going from sim drifting into the real world is really a double-edged sword, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I feel like if you've never drifted before and you pick up drifting first in the simulator, that probably would transfer over to you getting quicker up to speed in real life when you're ready to actually drift in real life. If you're already like an established driver, and then you're going and just strictly doing sim drifting right now because we can't do anything else really, I think you really need to remind yourself that sim drifting, and I think I'd have to I think I know what Lewis Hamilton is talking about, or what he thinks is, unless you're mindful and you're aware of what the simulator is technically supposed to be used for, if you're not aware of that, you will develop bad habits that will be a negative effect to you in real life.
Right.
Like, for example, for like circuit racing, you're not using the simulator to get used to driving the car. That's not what in my opinion, that's not what the simulator is used for. The simulator is used to continue your motor functions. So steering inputs or throttle inputs, learning your braking points on the tracks, like in iRacing and stuff like that, in circuit racing, all those tracks are laser scanned. So they're exactly as they are in real life, braking points, all that stuff. So that's what they use that for. They use that to learn where they can get a couple tenths here, a couple tenths there, braking later here, where sim drifting doesn't really have that right now because the tracks are modeled by a person and not actually modeled off of laser scanning the facilities. So I think maybe once drifting is able to do that, if that is a possibility in the future, then that will just add to it being more of a tool. But I really think that people need to be aware that if you 100% think that anything simulator is going to make you a better driver just by driving the simulator, I think they're wrong.
Right.
I think it can actually be a negative effect to you unless you're aware that, hey, I actually just need to be using it for A, B, and C. To develop these certain skills that I feel like I'm lacking in. I need to focus on using those, not using the simulator as a whole throughout your entire style of driving.
I know that's 100% true because every time I try to drift in a sim with Ryan, he just slams into me. I go flying off the track and then he continues by. And he's like, oh, what happened?
Oops, did I do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what do you think?
You don't have the G-forces in the simulator too, and that's huge for controlling a car. You know, if you do a lot of sim drifting and you're not driving in real life, you will lose that sensation.
Right.
I was gonna say I've heard that, and I've heard that like a lot of the people, like it's like a 50-50. Like when you go into like sim drifting or just sim racing in general, it's like kind of like a mindset thing. And if you go in with the wrong mindset, then you usually don't like it. You kind of hate it and you're like, oh, this is terrible. And I think it's kind of like you said too, it depends on your setup. Because I mean, I've played the like $150, stupid steering wheels. And it's like, I'm not using this. This is terrible. But I mean, that's nothing compared to what, all the drives out and everything now. It's completely different.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you can spend mass amounts of money just on a steering wheel and pedal setup. And that's probably one of the major downfalls of the simulator world is just the hardware, how vastly different the hardware is. And I think the hardware in sim drifting world is way more vast than the hardware on a competitive drift car. Everybody's at a certain level, everybody's drift car is kind of similar. They kind of build them to kind of a set standard of what a competitive drift car should be doing. Whereas like the vast difference in hardware and sim drifting is like bottom of the barrel to like complete top of the line. You know what I mean? And that drastically affects one, how the physics of the car feel, how easily or how difficult you're able to drive the cars, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So unless they can bridge that gap, it's not as much of a tool as I think people think it is.
Yeah.
I still think it's a very important tool. I'm not down.
No, definitely.
I love it. I think it works great.
That's great. The research
I think there is a common misconception that people treat it as too real.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
I also think that on the flip side, people treat it too fake as well. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. We have pro drivers that use simulators to familiarize themselves with a track. It's like you said, they're not making themselves a better driver by doing it, but they are familiarizing themselves with maybe where they want to try to brake when they get there. And so when you're at a certain level like that, you find yourself being able to fine tune once you get to the track because you gave yourself that broader knowledge using the simulator, right?
Yeah, 100%. And like, for example, the year that Peter won Long Beach, he drove Long Beach on the simulator for like, however many laps, 1,000 laps, not to be able to drive the car better, but to get more familiar with the course and his timing and where he can put the car and where he needs to be.
Exactly. So if a course is built correctly, I wanted to say anatomically correctly, I guess it would still kind of work. The anatomy of the course, if it's all correct and your visuals are the same, then I could see that being a huge tool. So what do you think, Kyle? Like if we got a model of Pat's Acres, is that going to help me when I start running that when Ryan decides that he's going to teach me how to drift his car?
Yeah, I think it would 100%. One, it'd familiarize yourself with the course. And they have a Pat's Acres map that's very good. A guy built it off.
Yeah, they do.
A kid in UK built it off of Google Earth. And he actually sent it to us before he let it out, and a bunch of us tested it out and gave him some pointers. And it's very, very, very close to the real thing, in my opinion. Like almost to the T. All the elevation changes, everything, little bumps, certain areas where you go off course and there's a bump there, all that's in there. So I think as far as getting familiar with the track, it's definitely a good tool. As far as learning how to like legitimately drift the track, I think that's something that you should always tackle in real life and not solely rely on the simulator. Like I said, if you do, it gives people, I feel like it gives people a false sense of confidence because they feel like they kill it in the simulator on this track and then they go to the track in real life and your sense of speed is completely different. You feel everything in the car in real life. That's the main thing with simulator drifting is you don't have inertia. You don't lose any of that feeling and you drive the car mostly by feel in real life.
Yeah.
Whereas the simulator, you're feeling everything through your hands.
Right. A simulator is never going to be able to simulate you pooping your pants because you've gone through a corner too fast. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what about, do you like VR versus not VR? Do you think there's a huge difference as far as like the way that it like helps you see things, or like as far as like using it as a tool? Is it better to have VR because you get more of a real feel? Or
Ryan, you're talking about like when you turn your head, being able to have the aspect change, right?
Yeah, because you're wearing the goggles and all you see is what's going on in the game.
Right.
Yeah, I use VR. As far as like how much immersion you get with VR, that's probably the best thing about it because you can see everywhere around you, up, down, behind you. So you have that visual aspect of looking over your shoulder as you would in real life. And it also, because it's VR, you can kind of simulate a little bit of the G-force just because of how immersed you are in there, as far as like where you would naturally feel like you're leaning into a turn or something like that. You kind of trick your body into doing that because of how immersed you are in the VR. The only downside to VR, the technology is not quite there as far as the clarity. It's not crisp like you would have like with a triple monitor setup, whereas like it's very, very detailed and clear. The VR is still what they call has like a screen door effect. So it almost looks like you're looking outside through a screen door. It still has kind of that grainy glare. So as far as that goes, for drifting, I think it's good. For circuit racing and stuff like that, I don't prefer the VR because you can't look ahead. You can't see that far ahead, so you don't see your brake markers and stuff like that. So I guess the only positive aspect that I get out of the VR is just how immersed you are in the car.
Are you using like a Vive setup or what are you using?
I have an Oculus Rift.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like the first CV1 or something like that, the first generation.
Oh man.
It's good. The only problem is if you live somewhere that's really humid too, though, it can fog up very easy.
I never even thought about that, but that makes sense.
So you got to have like a little fan blowing on you to kind of like help that.
Yeah.
Hey, you're just simulating the wind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've had it fog up on me pretty bad before.
Huh.
Yeah, well, and I've heard because the Oculus Rift really isn't that expensive, and it's actually cheaper to do the VR versus like triple monitors or even like a double monitor setup. Usually, it's cheaper to do the Oculus.
Yeah, because of the triple monitor, you got to have the stand, all that stuff.
Exactly.
It can't be pretty expensive. You can do it for pretty cheap still, but if you want some really decent, like really quick, like refresh rate monitors, you're gonna spend a pretty penny.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
I mean, you're going to pay almost what? You're going to pay for one monitor what you pay for the VR probably.
Yeah, I think the Rift's like $400 bucks. You can get away with getting 3 monitors for around then, but then you still need to build or buy a stand, which is going to be another $200-300 bucks.
Yep.
You got to make sure you got the proper video card that can accept all the plugs for that many monitors.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I know this is kind of going a different direction here, Kyle, and I know you're going to laugh, but have you drifted a V8 car yet?
Have I drifted a V8 car?
Yeah. I remember that was always my thing that I would ask you, like way back in the day at Park, like, because you were always so stern on like, I've never drifted a V8 car, I'll never do it. And so every time I remember, I'd talk to you like, when are you gonna come drive my car? And then like it just happened that we would never be there at the same time. So have you drifted one yet?
As long as I've been drifting, I've never drifted a V8 car.
Wow.
Not once.
All right. Well,
I've driven a V8 240. I've never drifted a V8 drift car.
Well, probably sometime this summer, my Corvette, my C5 Corvette's going to be done with my old Pro-Am motor. So,
oh, dang, you got a Corvette. I want a Corvette so bad.
You're going to have to come take a few laps in that at Park for sure.
Yeah,
listen,
I'm down. I love Corvettes. Matt Field got me hooked on vets.
Well, listen, we're keeping this under wraps a little bit, but there is going to be a point where it's kind of a crossover content where Ryan's going to be teaching me how to drift, and he's going to have his rental drift cars out. And we're going to make kind of a thing of it. So I know your invite's already in the mail, but we'll talk to you about it later on. Hey,
yeah, for sure. If I'm in town, I'm down for whatever.
Oh, I know you are, my friend. That's what we love about you. And speaking of weird questions that are totally off topic, Ryan and I before this were talking about how just amazing your car sounds, excuse me, but
the red PSI car.
But how different it sounds. And I was trying to kind of talk through, what could be making that sound. Can you, for the listeners at home, kind of walk through what your red PSI S13 is?
Well, if you're talking about the sound, it was just what the motor setup was. It was basically a S13 red top bottom end with a 2.2 liter stroker.
Knew it.
Tomei.
Yep. Knew it. That's exactly what I said. I said it sounds like a stroker.
And then it had a Neo VVL head off of a front-wheel drive Premier in Japan that we put on that block. So you got to modify it pretty heavily to put that on there. But Ryan probably remembers, I had nothing but issues with that motor before, popping rocker arms. No matter what I did, it would pop rocker arms or something. So I was constantly, even in competition, I'd be so scared to just get into it, like off a wall or a clip, because I was like, man, this thing's going to blow a rocker arm off. So that's the whole reason to do a VVL head on the SR is it eliminates your worry of throwing rocker arms. The stock head can rev to like 10,000, 10,500 or something like that. I think people have revved them up to 12, something crazy like that.
Yeah, they're cool.
That's another reason why mine sounded so crazy, because we revved it so high. We revved it to $9,000.
Okay, that makes sense.
Unheard of for an SR. Most people are around, a high revving SR is usually around like 82, 8,500. And that's fairly high.
Did you send producer Nick that chase video that you and I did?
Yes, I did.
Kyle, we're gonna you can still see us. Your image is actually gonna go away here for a second because producer Nick is gonna find our video. This is going to be, you're going to hear a little bit of the sound of my car, but you're also going to hear the sound of your car, and I want people to be able to experience that. So go ahead and open, producer Nick, go ahead and open the messenger from Ryan. He's on it. Yeah, it's so hilarious to me because, man, your car, it just sounded so different. And like when that rev limiter would hit, instead of being a up, it was
so fast.
It sounded like a machine going off. Yeah. And it was so much fun to do a chase lap behind you. And of course, when I was doing chase stuff with my turbo car, that was like right before drones became a thing. And all of a sudden, 1 year after I started doing that, I was obsolete. But some of my fondest memories are actually of doing that, like chasing you guys around the track. It was just
I
so
remember
cool.
that.
It was so crazy because, we're starting to get into your videos now. Ooh, this is a good one. This is a good one, Kyle. I hope you can hear this. You should be able to.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll turn my volume up.
Go ahead and hit play, producer Nick. Oh, yeah, it has music. Doggone it. Yeah, this one's got music. It's a cool video, but we can't play the sound.
There should be another. There was one that was from YouTube.
Yeah.
That didn't have music. Because I checked.
Nick's going to go ahead and pull that up. This is a great video, though. I know you can't see it right now, but it's one, the title of it's literally just Kyle Pollard at Park, and you are throwing smoke like crazy. And I remember, man, when you first showed up there and people were looking at your car and you had RT 615Ks on it, and it was kind of shocking. People were looking at that going, isn't that going to be way too much traction for this little track? But it really wasn't. It really wasn't. It was just, I don't know. You were just able to throw that thing around so well. Do you attribute that to the track, or do you attribute it to the driving or the car?
I can attribute it to the car having that much grip. That car had tons of grip. I mean, I think that was like its detriment, because Ryan probably remembers, I used to grenade transmissions in that thing all the time.
No kidding.
Oh yeah.
I sheared a ring gear and pinion at PARC one day, like first lap. It just sheared it to nothing. I don't know if you know Brian Hartsock. He owns Unicorn Garage right now. Mm-hmm. He's the one that helped me a lot on that car. And he was kind of the brains behind like setting up the suspension on that. This is long before I kind of knew. I mean, I know a lot about suspension setup, obviously, because I'm doing stuff with Werthouse. I've learned a lot from there. But back then when I was driving that car, Brian was kind of the suspension guru, and he comes from a drag racing background. So we were constantly messing with the suspension on that thing. You can see, if you go on YouTube, there's a lot of crowd videos from the crowd at Pat's Acres, and videos of that from the start line into the first turn, and you can see like how much it would squat on throttle. I mean, it almost dragged the rear bumper on the ground. It would just go. It made over 600 horsepower to the wheels, which is the little 4-cylinder. And even first, second, third gear at PARC, it would haze the tires, but it would not blow the tires off. It would just hook and go. And it kind of made it actually very hard to drive on that track.
Well, I bet it made it hard to chase you if you were doing a tandem as well, because you just take off like a rocket. Producer Nick has the video pulled up. Let's go ahead and start that, Nick. Yeah, he's getting full screen of that going. This is a video that I took from the bumper in my car. Not hearing any audio. It's probably still muted on YouTube, Nick. Yeah.
It kind of.
Whoa, hello.
Blow out the speakers.
I bet it made it hard to. And something else got unmuted there, buddy. I'm sorry about that, Kyle. Here.
Oh, no worries.
All right. Okay, pause it for a second. I don't know if you knew this or not, but that crappy little white Protege that was following you, it had 360 horsepower in all-wheel drive. And
that video. I've probably watched that video 100 times.
It's
I know exactly the video you're talking about.
Listen, my pride's not going to let me say that I had trouble keeping up with you, but let's just say your car accelerated much more quickly than I expected, okay?
Yeah, I give that to Brian. I mean, he was the one that was setting up the suspension on that car. And I was still kind of like maybe a rookie in that aspect as far as like suspension setup. I mean, I knew suspension setup, but when it really came down to like, a lot of the anti-squat aspects of the S13, which is kind of its downfall compared to the S14 and S15, and it has the anti-squat in the subframe. And I knew nothing about that back then, to be honest. I had become pro. I had no idea what anti-squat was until Brian taught me what it was. Mm-hmm. And that's when that car ended up being really fast, is when we eliminated the anti-squat in that thing. And that's why in that video is why it was so fast. Is I think that was right around the time when we took the anti-squat out of that car.
This had to have been mid-high 11-second car at that point, because it's so quick. I bet you would have taken it to the track, and even struggling to put down power in first and second gear, you probably would have been low 12s, even just on
I did a low 12 in my 380 horsepower SR. I think that car would have been more like mid 10s.
You could be right.
I could have hit a 10. I think it could have hit a 10. Like, I'm pretty certain it'd be in the 10s for sure, even on street tires.
That is crazy, man.
Okay, that's awesome.
Let's listen to the rest of this video. So high revving. Listen to that.
I know. I love the rev limiter on it. It's amazing. And I've definitely probably watched this video my fair share of times too.
How many views have it had?
So good, so good.
That is so wild, Kyle. All right, that's good, Nick. What do you think, man? Have you driven? How does that car stack up with some of the others that you've driven?
As far as like in present day?
Yeah, in present day.
It's a dinosaur.
That's awesome.
If you think that car is fast, like I don't even think you could do that. Thing would be like a basic Pro-Am car today. I mean, it's only 600 horsepower,
Only
which is
600.
which is a lot for an SR. But I mean, you look at the warehouse cars; each one of them's 1,000 horsepower. And I drove Peter's car a little bit at Road Atlanta, and that's the scariest thing I've ever driven. I mean, it's not you can't even put it in the same category. It's like it's just mind blowing what those cars can do as compared to what my car back then can do.
Do you feel
I mean, they're on 295s. I was on 265s back then.
Is that kind of the barrier to entry, the 1,000 horsepower mark these days?
I would say yes and no. There seems to be still like this horsepower race in FD, it seems like, but it becomes a point to where you can only put as much down as the tire is capable of handling. You know, a lot of the tires and tracks, like some of the places where the temperatures are at and the humidity and stuff like that, the track temp, you can overheat the tires so fast and they get so greasy. Obviously, some companies combat that a little bit better than others. I couldn't say which ones those are. And if I did, I wouldn't want to say, but so the cars now with so much power, it really comes down to fine tuning the final drives in those cars and your wheel speed. And that's the main reason why everybody has a quick change.
Yeah.
Like for example, when we go to Orlando has the very last turn is that long left-hander, and it's long, and it just wastes the right side tire, like waste it. If we run our optimal final drive, like what we would want there, and wheel speed, in practice we get one lap, and then our second run, the tires they're already done. Like you can barely hold it together for the second run. Dang. So we actually have to run at some courses a less ideal final drive than what we would want to combat the wheel speed, to be able to control the tire wear of the cars.
Because if you went into a third round, you'd be done.
Yeah, I mean, and it also matters of like if you're leading or chasing first, you know what I mean? Because if you, for example, at Orlando, in order to hit that 100-point qualifying line, you're super wide, you're super high everywhere, and you're just on it at full lock, and you're tired. And you have a long right-hander on the bank, a small transition into a huge left-hander after that, and that's all you have. So controlling the tire wear at that track becomes very, very difficult. And like I said, if you're doing your 100-point run and you're leading first, your tires are theoretically toast. So it makes it much harder to chase after that. So during practice, that's what we're trying. Orlando is probably the most difficult for us, I would say, in dealing with the tire wear and trying to get the optimal final drive. And we're typically outside of what we normally would like to be at. So that meaning that would run at a gear. We would run at a gear before we would max out the wheel speed we want to be at in order to control our tire wear throughout our two runs, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah. That is fascinating, right?
It's wild. It's wild. I feel like it's just like you were saying about the whole EDC thing. There's so much more to it, and there's so much more that goes into all of it than I think everyone realizes. You know, they just see it on TV, they see it on the videos, and they're like, oh, that looks cool, I can do that. But it's mind-blowing. FD these days is wild.
And I'm sorry, Kyle, but like we're starting to run short on time here, man. There is so much more that we could be talking about here. I have so many questions for you. I think we're just going to have you back on.
Yeah, I mean, that's just another reason for me to have me back on for round
right?
2.
Exactly, right. Dude. So before you go, though, we got to know all of your relevant links. First of all, where's your personal stuff at?
You can find me on all social media at just my name, Kyle Pollard. And that's basically all I'm on right now. I'm not that active on social media anymore because I'm trying to focus more on like real life stuff.
Yeah, you're a driver, man.
But yeah, I mean, Instagram, Kyle Pollard, Facebook, Kyle Pollard, all that stuff. I don't have Twitter or anything.
That's perfect. And then if
don't Snapchat me either.
No Tinder, folks. Come on now.
Yeah.
If folks want to hear more about what's happening with the team you're working with, where can they find that?
You can find that anywhere on social media. PARC Drift Team. You can also check out the YouTube channel Candy Machine, and that basically has a lot of the behind the scenes of each event that we're at.
Nice.
Right now, it's basically just been controlled by Peter. He's been at home doing his stuff, so he's been the only one that's been uploading videos onto that. But as the season starts again, then we'll go back into having all that behind the scenes BTS stuff for you guys as the season goes on. But obviously, right now, we don't have a lot of content to put out.
Oh, people are going to want to see the old stuff, though. And as far as the new stuff is concerned, the EDC stuff, where can folks find that stuff?
Same thing. Instagram, you can go to EDC_Drift, and then Facebook, it is EDC Electronic Drift Championship. If you have a Discord, you can follow the EDC Discord that has all the available links for everything that you would need as far as any information you're seeking about the event or events or series. If you have any kind of more like technical questions or anything, you can DM me. Don't blow me up with DMs because it's hard to answer so many questions at once of stuff that you could just find on the Discord or stuff like that. So if there's something you can't find, then yeah, feel free to DM me with any questions, and I'll do my best to steer you in the right direction.
That is very cool, man. And
Awesome.
We will have links to everything that you're doing underneath this episode, both in video format on our Twitch channel, on the Facebook, on the D-Live, as well as, of course, the YouTube. And when it goes out to podcasts, available on all major podcast platforms, you can go ahead and find all that info underneath in the description. Kyle, man, it's been a long time since I've seen you. Yeah. It's really, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great seeing you guys, man. Thanks for having
definitely.
me.
Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, Kyle. Are you coming to PARC?
Probably not this weekend. No, I'm pretty busy this weekend working. I might for one day. I don't know. I'll message you if I do.
Sounds good. Perfect. Yeah, I'll. I should be out there tomorrow if my car is done. If not, I'll be out there Sunday and Monday for sure. So.
I will not be there tomorrow. My wife has all kinds of stuff planned because I'm actually turning 37 tomorrow, which is super fun.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, my friend. Instead of celebrating my birthday at the track, I'm going to be at home drunk barbecuing. So
that's a pretty good trade-off, I feel like.
That sounds like fun to me.
Thank you, my friend. Hey, you have a good one. Thank you once again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, have a good one.
Take care.
Thanks.
Very cool. I always like that guy.
It's so much information.
It was an information download, man.
I know.
So much.
I know. For some of that, I felt like I was probably just like the blank stare at the camera. Just so much information there.
Dude, are you going to be trying out for the winter series?
Shit, if I had a wheel and all that, maybe.
Yeah, we'll find you a wheel. It's fine.
Or if I get time, stop working on my cars. But hopefully the whole thing with the S14 is it should be good to go after this. I mean, I really went through and tried to pre-plan and take everything I've learned over the years and all that and really put it into this so that we don't have to work on it. Because, I mean, let's be real. Once I got my V8 car together, other than, like breaking some parts here and there, it was pretty much straightforward. I didn't have any problems running. I didn't have any suspension parts break. I'm still running the same coils, the same diff, the same axles, so as far as that all goes, that stuff's all solid. So as long as all my coolant lines and all this is all sealed up, and I really think that rerouting on the coolant lines on the JZ like I have hopefully is going to help combat the heat and hopefully get all the air out of my motor.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I don't know how it's going to go. I've never seen anyone that have done it like this. So
I know you're going to be fine. People are going to be able to see you at Pat's Acres tomorrow, which is the 23rd, the 24th, and are they running the 25th as well? Wow.
Yes, we are, all 3 days.
All Memorial Day weekend. So you guys that are listening to this real time, you have to come and check it out if you're local.
Oh, yeah, $15 to get in the gate.
Mm-hmm. We're not going to be there. It doesn't look like anyway. It doesn't look like we're going to be there as a Clutch Kick Radio just yet. We're still working all that out. But here, starting real soon at the events, you are going to see us there. And I hope that you guys can come by and say hi as we're doing a little bit of recording. Ryan, man, as always, an amazing episode. I just am so impressed with all of these people. You know, we've got... remind me who we have coming up here in the next couple of weeks.
Edward.
Yeah, Edward.
Oh, what's his last name? He's going to be so mad.
From the Mustang Drift forums.
Yes, he is the owner of FMC Drift. Edward Thompson.
And then who else we got?
And then after that, on the 5th, we got Dalton Gearhart.
Oh, that's going to be a good show.
Yeah.
You guys, please stay tuned in to what we're doing here, because I mean, it's just, it's going to be nothing but just bigger, better, going more local, going more national. We're going to be covering all of the drift news and talking to all of the drift people that you want to see. So please do give us a like, give us a share, subscribe, follow us. Give us a like if you get a chance, because I mean, we really are going to be doing some awesome stuff here. Ryan's making it happen. I'm bringing the audio to you, so please do help us out in that way. Show us a little bit of love, and let your friends know. If you have a friend that's into drifting, make sure you're sharing this episode with them so that they can soak up some of this incredible knowledge that we're getting from these amazing drivers, man.
It is. It's that's like the best part about all this is that, you know, this is all information that either, you know, I've talked to people directly about, or, you know, I would say there's a bunch of things he said right there that I've never even heard before. So, you know, I'm learning just as much as well as everyone else. So I think I'm just sitting here soaking it up just as much, you know. Dude,
if Rylac is learning even more than you guys are at home, what are you doing right now? Not subscribed.
Right?
Subscribe to this channel and soak up some of this knowledge, baby.
Oh, hey, yeah.
Ryan, again, thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate you being here. Thank you to Kyle Pollard for being on. How cool was that? Thank you to producer Nick, and thanks to everyone else at the Thomas Creek Digital Media studio here. Oh, hang on. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Folks, you can find us on Facebook at Clutch Kick Radio. You can find us on Instagram, right? At Clutch Kick Radio. ClutchKickRadio.com is not quite up yet, but we're working on it. The YouTube channel is Boost Booze BBQ, literally just all one word, Boost Booze BBQ. That's where you can find all of the automotive-related content that TCDM Radio is doing. You can also go on Spreaker to TCDM Radio, the username. You can find Clutch Kick Radio under that, or just search out Clutch Kick Radio. We're going to make sure to have every episode uploaded as soon as it comes out in video format, so that you guys that do podcasts can be listening to it. Hell, man, I think most of these people that watch the video probably should be listening to the audio version too, shouldn't they?
Oh, I think so.
Definitely.
And I think that it's definitely worth noting that we'll be here next Friday. Every Friday from now on. Every week, every Friday from either 4 or 5 o'clock, our podcast will start every Friday.
Yeah, so make sure that you're tuning in. Okay, now we can actually start it off here.
Oh, there it is.
So, Ryan, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Always good talking to you. Always good to talk to Kyle Pollard. Thank you once again for tuning in. Thanks for telling a friend. And for Kyle Pollard and Ryan and everybody else here, this is Andy. We will see you next time.